Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mon Kurian. Today I'm going live from Tiju's Academy, Tiruvalla. Hope all of you are doing good. So let's start today's session. So today we'll be discussing on contractions. So how to use contractions in IELTS speaking. The sessions that we are going to discuss, the slides that I've prepared will be helping you in your speaking, and also the contractions. So first let's see what are contractions. Contractions എന്താണ് നമുക്ക് ആദ്യം നോക്കാം. Let's go over to the first slide and see what contractions are. So what are contractions? A contraction is when you combine two or more words to make them shorter and make them flow together when speaking. For example, it is. So നമ്മൾ it's alle pronounce in it is or it's, or want to can be pronounced as wanna. Most contractions are used in informal speaking. Is the IELTS speaking test formal or informal? എന്താണ് IELTS speaking test formal ആണോ informal ആണോ? The IELTS speaking is 100% informal. Part 1 is informal short answer questions. So everybody knows part 1 il namakku first as per the IDP guidelines 12 question aanallo warm up il choikkunu. It's called the warm up session. 12 question aanallo namakku choikkunu. So the first 4 questions will be your intro questions. Nammal introduction questions aayikillu. Where may I have your full name please, where do you come from or where do you live, and then you have your are you currently working or studying, tell me about your home, house, hometown. So the warm up sessions. So short answers ആണ് നമ്മൾ അവിടെ പറയുന്നത്. So it's around 2 to 3 sentences മതിയായിരിക്കും അവിടെ. So 2 to 3 sentences, that's more than enough in your warm up, the part 1. Part 2 is also your cue card. That's your cue card session. That's also 1 minute of preparation and 2 minutes to speak. Right, when you speak, you can speak informally. Yes, you can speak informally, but make sure you don't break the speak. Your speak, the speech that you're giving should be long. It should be at least a 2 minute speech, right? And the part 3, that's your follow-up session. So in follow-up session there is also an informal discussion on broader current issues, right? Other, it should not personal questions are lacking. So personal questions are it's in the warm-up session, but in part 3, the follow-up session, you have to answer in general. So avade I aanengile ivade v aayirikkum nammal use cheyna in part 3. That's your follow-up session, right? So part 1 is informal short answer questions. Part 2 is an informal talk or a speech that you give for 2 minutes, and the part 3 is your follow-up session where you have to discuss on broader, and it should be minimum 4 to 5 or 6 sentences aayirikkum nammal avade parayende, and make sure you answer them all in general, not personally, right? So this means informal language is fine to use in all parts of your test. They are an accepted part of spoken English. One study pointed out that they even heard contractions used by the BBC and the British royal family, and this is true. Fine. So contractions, when you combine 2 or more words to make them shorter, right? For example, it is, you can write it's, want to, wanna, going to, gonna, angane veningi namakku parayam. So contractions. Now let's move over to the next slide and see what the next slide says. Using wanna or gonna. Yes, it's fine to use contractions, words joined in pronunciation in the IELTS speaking test. In fact, it will boost your scores for pronunciation. Right? If you know, pronunciation is also a major factor that contributes to 25% of your mark, right? So avade namakku it's going to boost your scores. Namakku scores avade koodal gettum if you are using contractions, right? The examiner has a clear picture that you're good in your pronunciation and you can speak well. So let's see, want to, or example namakku one or two examples. I've put down some examples. Let's check what are these. So want to, I want to go to the cinema tonight. So you can, in short, you can say I really want to go to the cinema tonight, right? The second one, the majority of students want to travel before starting university. The majority of the student wants to travel before starting universities, right? So wanna, WANNA, want to inde short ആക്കിയിട്ട് നമ്മൾ അത് contract ചെയ്ത് സംസാരിക്കുമ്പോൾ that's only in the speaking term, not in the written term, right? And now let's go to the next one. It's going to, you can pronounce it as gonna, Gonna, right? He's going to visit his grandmother this evening. Adu nammal pronounce cheyumbol when you're contracting it, you can say he's gonna visit his grandmother this evening. Let's see the second example. The local council are gonna improve the roads in this area. The local council are going to improve the roads in this area. Going to ആണ് നമ്മൾ contract ചെയ്തിട്ട് gonna പറയുന്നത്. In this example, the local council are gonna improve the roads in this area, right? So whenever you're using contractions, make sure you're pronouncing it correctly, right? A pronunciation clarity ആയിട്ട് പറയണം. Wanna, gonna, right? Don't swallow it. Make sure when you speak out, it should be clearly spoken out. Okay. Let's move over to the next slide. അടുത്ത slide എന്താണ് പറയുന്നത്? Wana and Gana are only used in spoken English and not in formal writing. Very true. If you know the academic and the general writing, other formal ആയിരിക്കും വരുന്നത്. But I think there are informal letters in general writing. Avada you can use it, but I'll discuss that later in the slides. First, let's see. Wana and Gana are only used in spoken English and not in formal writing. The reason is that Wana and Gana are pronunciation features. Very true. It is how we pronounce want to, but it is not how we write it in formal written English. It's fine to use these words in your IELTS speaking test, and in fact will help with your pronunciation band score. Are these contractions in the Cambridge dictionary? Yes, they are, right? It is also mentioned in the Cambridge dictionary thanne idu mention cheyidittundu, right? These contractions. But yes, make sure that you're not using it in your formal writing in your task 1 and your task 2, right? In your academic as well as in the general namakku varam. In the letter writing part, you have informal letter writing. We'll discuss about that, but make sure you're not using it in your writing sessions, writing examination, writing practice sessions. You're not going to use Gana and Wana, the contractions. You're going to write it in full, want to or going to. Make sure of that. Okay, let's move over to the next slide. And അടുത്ത slide നോക്കിയിട്ട് നമുക്ക് നോക്കാം. Let's go. IELTS speaking pronunciation. So as I mentioned before, pronunciation, you can go ahead and use it in your contractions. Use them in your IELTS speaking. It's part of your pronunciation. So let's read what it says. Pronunciation is 25% of your marks for IELTS speaking. This means the way you pronounce sounds, words and sentences is marked in your speaking test. Part of that does include linking sounds and linking words such as gonna, wanna, it's and doesn't. So try to learn these contractions and use them naturally in your test. Yes, don't force it, use them naturally in your test. For example, whenever you are practicing at home or with your friend or your speaking partner in your institutes or wherever you are practicing, nammal words practice to contract. So it's why you should practice it, because it's going to help you in your pronunciation scores. It's going to boost up your scores. Namukku our pronunciation is 25% undallo. Everybody knows that pronunciation is it's considered to be 25% of your total ranking. So avade namukku it's going to give you a boost, right? So make sure whenever you're practicing, you're using it and use them naturally. Don't force it, these linking words or these contractions. Fine, let's move over to the next slide and let's see what the next slide says. Common list of contractions. To be, I am, you are, he is, he's, she is, she's, it is, it's, we are, they are, right? But make sure you practice it. The pronunciation should come out clearly. Make sure you are not pronouncing it wrong, in a wrong way. Make sure whenever you're practicing, you're pronouncing it in a clear way. The clarity should be there in your tone. നമ്മൾ സംസാരിക്കുമ്പോൾ ആ ടോണിൽ ക്ലിയർ ആയിട്ട് these words should come out, right? To have എന്ന് നോക്കാം. I have, you have, he has, he's, etc. So idana some common list of contractions. I've prepared a few others. Let's go ahead and check. So, but make sure whenever you're pronouncing it, because it should come out naturally also, and it should be clear. The pronunciation should be clear. You should not swallow the words so that it is not clearly, heard by the examiner. Examiner is the mansilaganam that you're saying you are, right, instead of you are. Okay, നമുക്ക് അടുത്ത സ്ലൈഡിലോട്ട് പോയിട്ട് നോക്കാം എന്താണ് അടുത്ത സ്ലൈഡ് പറയുന്നത്. I will go to my aunt's house tomorrow. I'll go to my aunt's house tomorrow. You will പറയത്തില്ല. You'll swallow the W and you'll just say you will. He will, he'll, etc. So idana a few examples for will. And negatives, നമ്മൾ negative പറയത്തില്ല. So it is not, isn't, ISN apostrophe T, are not, aren't, aren't പറയത്തില്ല, aunt, 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 നമ്മൾ aunt, auntie പറയത്തില്ല. It's the same thing. Are not is aunt, aren't അല്ല aunt. So make sure practice ചെയ്യാൻ നേരം it should be pronounced clearly. Okay, did not, didn't, did not is didn't, has not is hasn't, have not is haven't, should not, shouldn't, would not, wouldn't, could not, couldn't. So negatives il tamal parayumbo these are the contractions. Is not into isn't, are not into aren't, aren't alla aunt, AUNT ആയിരിക്കും നമ്മൾ pronounce ചെയ്യുന്നത്. So make sure practice sessions il നമ്മൾ practice ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ you are pronouncing these words correctly, the contractions. Okay, now let's move over to the next slide and see what does it say. Remember, these contractions are not used in formal writing as such as in the IELTS writing task 2. Very important. It is only for your speaking sessions, not for your writing sessions. Make sure that you don't do that in the writing sessions because it's a big no-no. You're not allowed. It has to be formal. It's not informal. The writing task 2 is not informal, it is formal. So no punctuation, no contractions are used there, right? Even when you're writing or you're practicing your writing, make sure, I am pretty much sure that you guys are not doing it, but just as a caution or a caution that you don't use these words in your writing. You are good to do it in your speaking sessions, but make sure you are not using them in your writing sessions. Writing practice in the samayathu idu use cheyan paadilla. Contractions are not used, right? So in formal writing such as the IELTS writing task 2 ellarku ariyalo. What is task 2? It's an essay that you need to write. So you have to write at least a minimum of 250 to 280 words ആയിരിക്കും നിങ്ങൾ എഴുതേണ്ടത്, right, in task 2. So in that writing task 2 essay അവിടെ നമ്മൾ ഒരിക്കലും contractions use ചെയ്യത്തില്ല. We are not going to use informal contractions there. We are just going to be formal. If these words, for example, njan backloട്ട് വന്ന ഒന്നുകൂടെ പറയാം, we are not going to write I'll, we are going to write I will. In your writing task 2, you are not going to write you'll, you are going to write the full, that is you will, he will, right? You are not going to write the contractions in writing task 2. Same as the negatives, is not should be written as is not, not isn't. Same thing goes with are not, does not, did not, has not, have not, should not, would not, or could not. You are not going to write isn't, aren't, doesn't, didn't, hasn't, haven't, shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't. Avade nammal task 2 il we are not going to do that, right? Because that's a negative and you are not going to get your band scores if you are going to write it informal. Essay aanu formal aayittarikkum ezhudandi namukku. We are not going to write it informally. So make sure in your writing practices you are practicing formal writing, not informal contractions used cheyali. Same thing with your report writing, that's your task 1, and same thing goes for formal letters or business letters. Formal letters and business letters or business letters, right? But task 1 il informal letter undu. There are in task 1 general, if you remember, in general, not in the academic side, in the general side. In the general side there is formal letters, business letters and informal letters, right? So but they are good to use in IELTS speaking. Contractions can also be used in informal writing such as the general writing task 1 informal letters. Make sure ഇത് ഓർത്തോണം ജനറൽ റൈറ്റിംഗിൽ ലെറ്റർ റൈറ്റിംഗ് ആണ് ജനറൽ ടാസ്ക് 1 is letter writing. Formal letters you are not allowed to do it. Business letters you are not allowed to do it. But if it's an informal letter in general writing task 1 you can use it. What is these contractions avade namukku use cheyam, but make sure you're not doing it in writing task 2, whether it's academic or general. Ayalum it has to be formal essay, report writing anengilum, formal letters general anengil or business. Only in the informal letters il maatram, that too just for the general candidate. Fair enough? So let's move over to the next slide. Some advanced contractions. The contractions below are only used in speaking and not in writing. Idu njan kore prasham indina njan ezhudiyekunu. Make sure you don't do it, because even a mistake is going to cost you your band scores. For example, you practice idu, but when it comes to the writing and the speaking part, it's fine, you can use it because they accept informal speeches aayirikkum. Part 1, that is your warm up anengilum, your cue card anengilum, your follow ups anengilum. But writing, it's a big no. You're not supposed to use contractions. That's why I'm mentioning it many times. The contractions below are only used in speaking and not in writing. Right? It's good to use these types of contractions in IELTS speaking, but not in writing. Writing, please don't do it. Don't do it. Yes, general task 1 anenge, informal letter anenge you can, but rest it's a big no. Okay, so let's see a few contractions, advanced contractions that I have just created for you guys. So I should have, so I should have, should not have, shouldn't have, I could have, I could have, I could not have, I couldn't have, I would have, I would have, I would not have, I wouldn't have. So ഈ contractions practice ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ make sure you're practicing it clearly, your pronunciation is clear. But again, a big no for writing. Writing ഇത് ഒരിക്കലും use ചെയ്യരുത്, whether it's your task 1 or task 2. But general candidates can use it in your letter writing task 1. That's only if you have get a informal letter. Informal letter writing ആണെങ്കിൽ അവിടെ use ചെയ്യാം. Remaining, please make sure you're not using it. Please be aware of it. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ band scores അവിടെ കുറയും. You're not going to get good band scores if you use contractions in your task 1 or task 2, whether it's academic. And for general candidates, you can go ahead and use it only if it's a task 1 il only if in the informal letter writing part. Speaking is good. Informal namukku use ചെയ്യാം because it's been accepted by IELTS. നമ്മൾ IDP accept ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. So it's not a problem. Fine. Okay. Let's go and look at the next slide. Example sentences using contractions. I should have finished my homework last night, but I didn't. I should have finished my homework last night, but I did not. Adinte contractions aanu I should have and I didn't. Right? Second example namukku nokam. He wouldn't have gone traveling if he'd have known how expensive it was gonna be avade pinne wouldn't have and he'd have. The government should have developed better public transportation if they want to limit global warming. They need to limit the use of cars, and the best way is to provide cheaper and more effective bus services. Right? Should have. The government should have in the contraction, in short. Right? And the last one, the fourth one, example nokam. If you're gonna learn a language, then improve your pronunciation. If you are, Y-O-U-A-R-E, gonna learn a language, going to learn a language, then improve your pronunciation. So these are, I've just mentioned it, it's only good for your speaking. Right? You're not going to write this in your task 1 or task 2. That's for the academic people. And for the general candidates, you can go ahead and use it only in your informal letters. The questions are, if it's an informal letter that you need to write, you can use it, but not on your formal and your business letters. Avade namukku idu use cheyam pattathilla. Fine. So these are the few examples of contractions that I created and how you can use contractions in your speaking sessions. Fine. So I'll see you in my next live sessions next time. So this is all. This is Mon Korean signing off from Tiju's Academy, Tiruvalla. Take care. Goodbye.